As he passed through, Anivachara Apasade, by undesirable elements and wicked persons. Pari Bhuyamana, being surrounded. Maksikabi, by flies. Eva, like. Vanagaja, an elephant coming from the forest. Tarajana, by threats. Tadana, beating. Ava, Mehana, passing urine on the body. Stevana, spitting on the body. Grava Sakrit, stones and stool. Rajaha, dusk. Prak Sepa, throwing. Putravata, passing air over the body. Durute, and by bad works. Tat, that. Aviganayan, without caring about. Eva, thus. Asatstane, habit not fit for a gentleman. Iteshmin, in this. Deha, Upalasane, in the shape of the material body. Sat Apadase, called real. Ubaya Anubhava Swarupena, by understanding the proper situation of the body and the soul. Swamahim, in his personal glory. Asfadhena, by being situated. Asama Ropita Aham Mama Abhimanvatat, not accepting the misconception of I and mine. Avikandita Manaha, undisturbed in mind. Prithivim, all over the world. Ekachara, alone. Paribabrama, he wandered. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Rishabhadev began to tour through cities, villages, mines, countrysides, valleys, gardens, military camps, cow pens, the homes of cowherd men, transient hotels, hills, forests, and hermitages. Wherever he traveled, all bad elements surrounded him, just as flies surround the body of an elephant coming from a forest. He was always being threatened, beaten, urinated upon, and spat on. Sometimes people threw stones, stool, and dust at him, and sometimes people passed foul air before him. Thus people called him many bad names and gave him a great deal of trouble, but he did not care about this, for he understood that the body is simply meant for such an end. He was situated on the spiritual platform, and being in his spiritual glory, he did not care for all these material insults. In other words, he completely understood that matter and spirit are separate and he had no bodily conception. Thus, without being angry at anyone, he walked through the whole world alone. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Narottam Das Thakur says, when a person fully realizes that the material body and world are temporary, he is not concerned with pain and pleasures of the body. As Sri Krishna advises in the Bhagavad Gita, Matra spasas tu kunteya sidnosa sukadukada agam payano nityas tams tiksava bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. As far as Rishabhadev is concerned, it has already been explained. Idam sariram mama duvibhavyam. He did not at all possess a material body. Who's knocking? And therefore he was tolerant of all the trouble offered to him by the bad elements in society. Consequently, he could not tolerate people's throwing stool and dust upon him and beating him. His body was transcendental, and consequently he did not all suffer pain. He was always situated in his spiritual bliss, as stated in Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, verse 61. Ishwara sava bhutanam hridesha juna tistati brahmanyan sava bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Since the Lord is situated in everyone's heart, he is in the heart of hogs and dogs also. If hogs and dogs in their material bodies live in filthy places, one should not think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature also lives in a filthy place. Although Lord Rishabhadev was maltreated by the bad elements of the world, he was not at all affected. Therefore it is stated here, he was situated in his own glory. He was never saddened due to being insulted in the many ways described above. Oma Jnana Tamarandasya Jnana Jnana Salakaya Chakshushamilitam Yena Tasmaye Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Ite Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nevasesa Sunyavadi Pastatide Satarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sri Vasudeva Gopakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So one thing's first, is described. Rishabhadev is not he is not an ordinary person like us, but he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna comes in many forms and for many, many reasons. So we've been reading over the weeks about Rishabhadev, is king, emperor of the whole world. And now he's at the end of his life. he's already decided, even though he had many sons, he's already decided who is going to replace him on the throne. So Bharat Maharaj, and we can see Bharatvasa, you can see how it's all coming down. He chose Bharat to replace him. And even though he was still connected with his family, he decided to go out and wander the whole world in different places as described in this purport by Srila Prabhupada. Not caring, not present really in his, externally in his body. So one important thing is there, that sometimes we have people that try to imitate. And it's very important that no conditioned jiva soul tries to imitate Lord Rishabhadev, although it's a part of this particular behavior of wandering around naked, not even a morsel of clothing on his body, not caring for eating, sleeping, for nothing. He's simply wandering here and there. And this is a manifestation of one who's avadut, or he is not at all concerned with his bodily situation. So Rishabhadev, he performed his duty expertly throughout his life, throughout his grihastha life. He had many sons, and it was explained that the sons were born of the heart, even though there was the actual involvement of intercourse. But actually it's explained that really they were born from the heart, because that represents, being born from the heart represents the consciousness. And then it's explained in that particular purport, just a bit further back, Prabhupada talks about the Garbhadan Sanskar, how people, devotees, prepare for having children. I know for a fact that when I was living here in Vrindavan during the 70s, in the early 70s, going into the early 80s, there were ladies who were wanting children, and they would prepare in such a way that they would chant 150 rounds of japa before they have intercourse. 150 rounds. What to speak of what Lord Rishabhadev and his wife do before they conceive children. Because Ivam Parampara Praptam, in the saintly Vana, Kshatriyas, kings, emperors, they receive this knowledge through disciplic succession. So Rishabhadev, he is self-realized. Obviously, ultimately he's Krishna, but he's posing as the perfect emperor. And the perfect emperor has perfect knowledge. Rajavidyam, Rajaguyam, the king of knowledge. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita in the 9th chapter, king of knowledge, Rajavidya, Rajaguyam, king of education. So Kshatriya class of men, they were not only born in Kshatriya family, parampara, evam parampara, but they were also qualified. Of course, nowadays in this perverted so-called caste system, people take birth in families. It's even explained in Bhagavad Gita how advanced souls, they enjoy in the they enjoy in the heavenly planets for many, many, many years, but come down into the families of Brahmins. I'm not referring to Vaishnavas at this particular point. I'm just talking about the karmic coming from heavenly planets back down to earth. And they arrive in these bodies, they take birth in these aristocratic families, but they're not really qualified. They don't qualify themselves. It's just a birth only. But with Rishabhadev, and all the kings before and all the kings after, they were all qualified, not just by birth, but by qualification. So Krishna says to Arjuna that he imparted this imperishable science to the sun god Vivaswan millions and millions of years. Of course, this conversation was taking place 5,000 years ago, just prior to the biggest battle that happened, as Prabhupada says, within the last 6,000 years. Konitai ki jai, Krishna Balarama ki jai, Radha Samsunda ki jai, Hari Hari Bol. So prior, Arjuna was listening to Krishna, and Krishna said, I imparted this imperishable science to the sun god Vivaswan. And Vivaswan imparted it to his son Manu, and Manu imparted his son Ishvaku. And like this, through chain of disciplic succession, this Rajavidya, Rajaguyam, is passed through the kingly class of men, the Kshatriya class of men. And the reason being is because of the predicament of the material energy. Krishna says that the material energy, and he describes the makeup, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. This is my inferior energy. But then Krishna goes on to say in the next chapter that he says, besides this inferior energy, O Arjuna, there is a superior nature of mine, which are all living entities who are sustaining the universe. They're struggling rather with material nature, but they're also sustaining the universe. So it is very difficult if one coming into the human form of life doesn't have any understanding whatsoever as to why they've taken birth in the human form, is in a very, very difficult predicament. That is why Vaishnava devotees, on taking initiation and following regulative principles, chanting Hare Krishna, we soften our hearts. And while softening our own hearts, and while concentrating on our own sadhana, for our own reasons, for our own benefits, we also have compassion on the people, on the souls that haven't gone through this process. That is why Prabhupada, even though he had so many plans, one of his grandest plan was to build this beautiful temple in Raman Reti, following the line of the 6 Goswamis. Lord Chaitanya also informed the Goswamis, you please go to Vrindavan and again unearth those wonderful places of pastimes of Krishna and Balaram, with the cowherd boys, Krishna with the gopis, Krishna with Radharani, and his friends and his mother and his father. And not only did they reveal and establish the places, they also built temples. If you look at Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he also unearthed the actual original place where Lord Chaitanya was born. And now Srila Prabhupada is coming in that line, where he also, before he came to the Western world, he was sitting in Vrindavan, at the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan, preparing himself for over 6 years. Prabhupada would be simply preparing himself to come to preach Krishna consciousness. Because of the predicament, I'll go back and I'll regress, I'm going to regress and explain that that is a huge predicament with not knowing the nature of the material energy. It's not just three-dimensional. Material nature is very much more dimensional than that. And I wouldn't want to, who am I? I'm not going to try to even put a figure on that. But it's not just about beautiful trees and flowers and waterfalls and oceans and hills and mountains and all kinds of things like that. We're talking about hidden nature. Durga Devi, she is in charge. She is the person that Krishna is giving responsibility to oversee this nature that we're living in. And it's very precarious because we can see a certain part of material nature with these conditioned eyes. We can hear, we can speak about it. But there are so many things we can't do. We cannot see the modes of material nature. The material nature has qualities. Those qualities, they are moving and acting every second. Krishna says, "Time I am, destroyer of worlds." So Krishna has put in motion this material energy through his incarnations. So the royal families, the emperors of the world, they have the Rajavidya and Rajaguyam. They have the understanding of Bhagavad Gita. And without this understanding, this information, this Rajavidya, Rajaguyam, it's the postgraduate study of any spiritual treatise. People talk, they use this word spiritual, it's loosely banded around. They use it without really understanding the fundamentals of spiritual understanding. They have no understanding whatsoever. So it is so important that we have a leader, an emperor, a leader to guide everybody throughout the whole world through their precarious situation of being embodied in the material nature. Because Krishna says to Arjuna in the 3rd chapter, Arjuna asks Krishna a very, very important question in the 3rd chapter. He says, "My Lord, what is it? It's as if I'm being forced to act against my will, even doing the wrong thing against my will. What is it, Lord? What is this energy that's forcing me to act sinfully? That's forcing me to act in a different way that I really want to act?" Krishna says, "Kamaresha krodesha, Rajaguna samudvaha, Mahashano Mahapatma, Vidyena Mahya Varinam." Krishna says it is lust, to Arjuna. So lust is a perverted reflection of love. So as a pure spirit soul, we become embodied in this material nature. But this material nature has a certain quality. It's called Rajagun. We're not talking about sattva or tamas at this point. I'm just focusing on the Raja. And Prabhupada says in that purport, "Vrityam jnanam etena, jnanano nityavarina, kama rupena kontaya, dusparena nalenacha." The Raja, the mode of passion, when it's mixed with the soul, when the soul associates with that passion, Prabhupada said it's like pure milk being mixed with sour tamarind or lemon. What happens when we boil milk and we mix lemon with it? It turns to curd, yogurt, curd. So this is what happens. This is the science that has to be understood by the population in general through the Kshatriya class of people. It's a science. Krishna says, I imparted this imperishable science to the sun god millions of years ago. It's a science. We have to understand everything through the science of Bhagavad Gita. So the science is that the soul becomes conditioned by this really difficult material nature in the form of passion. This earth planet is predominantly controlled by the mode of passion. So as soon as we get in contact with the mode of passion, that's when all our problems begin. Avrityam jnanametena jnana nityavarena kama rupena kuntaya dusparena lalena cha. It says that it's like fire inside, that mode of passion that forces us to do things that we shouldn't be doing as pure spirit souls. So, the nature of us, I've described a little bit about material nature. So now, let us hear about the spiritual nature, the Atma, the Self. We are marginal. That means, marginal means infinitesimal. Because we're infinitesimally situated in the material world, within the material body, we tend to get covered. Prabhupada gives the example of little minute particles of sand near the ocean. When the tide comes in, those particles get covered. And when the tide goes out, the particles are left to dry in the sun. So Prabhupada gives the example is that we, as spirit souls, as marginal energy, because we are so infinitesimal, it is so easy for us to get covered by the material nature. But the real purpose of human form of life is to rediscover who we are, is to rediscover our true nature. And what is that true nature? Anandamaya Vyasat. We are pleasure seeking. People say, don't enjoy. You shouldn't enjoy. We can't help but enjoy. But we enjoy the wrong things. When we're embodied in the human form of life, automatically we enjoy. We can't avoid enjoying. But we have to learn what to enjoy and what to not enjoy. That is the nature of it is the core of who we are. I was reading Bhagavad Gita this morning and I saw this beautiful verse and I thought I have to share it with you because it's part of what I'm talking about this morning. It says, it's just a paragraph, it says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss, and the living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for lust, for sense enjoyment, under the Rajagun, they come under the sway of this lust of Vrityam jnanametena jnana nityavarena. This material creation is created by the Lord to give a facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful propensities. And when they are completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entity begin to inquire about their real position. So, the nature of us, the core of who we are is we are pleasure-seeking. It's part of us. We cannot ever be not pleasure-seeking. We are eternally created as such. Krishna's energy, it's one of Krishna's energies. Krishna has created this energy, or manifested, maybe not use the word created, but we have been manifested by Krishna as these little parts and parcels to serve Krishna, because the nature of us is we are servants, but we are also enjoyers. That is who we are. So we are here to serve Krishna and enjoy Krishna, because Krishna reciprocates in that way. But if we don't do that and do the wrong thing and just serve this material energy, which is simply dead matter, that's when our loving propensity is turned into this yogurt or curd, and we become bewildered. So, can you imagine having that responsibility of an emperor of the whole world? That is why Krishna, when he drove Arjuna's chariot in between those armies, when Arjuna was sitting, he looked, he stood up, and he saw all his friends. And that's when he said, Krishna, I can't do this. I just cannot kill. So Krishna was so intent in making sure Arjuna was going to do the right thing. Because here again, Arjuna, he's got a choice. He can kill or not kill. It's a choice. Krishna would never force Arjuna. Even at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, after telling Arjuna everything, after all the instructions in the 18th chapter, Krishna says, now do as you please. I've told you, I've related this science, now you do as you choose. So Krishna will never force us in any way. So finally, when Arjuna understood his real duty, then he started killing. So us, as mere mortals, not that I want to consider us mortal, because we're not, we're spirit souls, but we don't have the responsibilities that Arjuna had. We don't have the responsibilities that Rishabhadev has. We don't have the responsibilities of any of the emperors of the world. You know? Balaram, Lord Balaram, he didn't want to engage in the war. Balaram said, I am going on pilgrimage. I will not get involved. But Krishna says, no. Paritranayam sadhunam vinasaya cha dushkritam dhammasam stapanathayo. That's what I'm going to do. I want to re-establish the Dharma. I want to put Yudhisthira, the rightful emperor, back on the throne. And Arjuna will be the instrument to lead it all up. And in the end, after that vicious, very vicious war that took place, does anyone know how many soldiers were killed? Yeah, but do you know precisely? It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in a purport there. How many soldiers, because there are two sides, don't forget. And Prabhupada said this was the biggest single war that was enacted over the last 6,000 years. You can imagine some of these warriors, all of them, gigantic, 7 foot plus tall, mighty armed. You know, the science of warfare, of military warfare, they all knew very well. They were all very, very expert in their own right to fight in the battlefield. But there had to be a losing side. And it was at the cost, at great cost. Because Arjuna, he was putting forward so many important arguments. He was saying, Krishna, what happens if we kill all these soldiers? What will happen to the women and children? What a dilemma. Can you imagine having moments to decide what to do? So eventually, after 18 days, I think on the 19th day, 20th day, it was revealed that there was over 640 million soldiers died in that war, just for the sake of re-establishing the correct dharma for the human being. But it was a war worth paying for. Because otherwise, Krishna says, also in the 4th chapter, even though it's an imperishable science, I instructed this imperishable science to the sun god Vivaswan. But he also says in the next chapter, but in time, the science became lost. I think it was for about 2 million years. The science was lost, there was chaos. And you go outside, you leave Vrindavan, we're sort of in a cocoon here. This is Vrindavan. We're not associated with the material world when we're here. But as soon as we step outside Vrindavan, it's almost like going back into the material world. You know? It's almost like, you know, oh, let's dip my toe in the material world again, you know. But even though there's not a desire to go back into the material world, we know very well we can just go a little distance and there it is, staring us right in the face, you know. And look at the chaos, because there's no Dharma, there's no emperor, there's no Rishabhadev, there's no Yudhisthira, there's no Parikshit Maharaj. Or we just have this stupid, you know, democracy, so-called, you know, blind leading the blind. No one knows what to do. So in the mood of nobody knowing what to do, they choose someone to do something. And what do? Nothing. They're only thinking of themselves. So we say, Paritranaya sadhunam. So we get relief from that. Krishna comes to please his devotee, but not just to please his Vaishnava, his devotee. It's also to put his devotee back on the throne, like Prahlad Maharaj. You know, can you imagine Hiranyakasipu? Not only did he rule the world, he ruled the whole universe. He ruled the whole 14 planetary systems. There was chaos. He was a big demon. So Krishna, Paritranaya sadhunam, he came to please Prahlad. But not only just to please Prahlad, he said, Prahlad, now you please me. You sit on the throne and manage. And that's exactly what Prahlad did. He sat on the throne and he managed. So, Vede Rama Yanai Chaiva, Paranae Bharate Tata, Odo Ante Chamajjicha, Hari Savatrajiyate. So we have all these stories. We have Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have Purana, we have Shruti, Smriti, Vede Rama, Yanai Chaiva. So the Vedas, Vede Rama, the Ramayana, Vede Rama, Yanai Chaiva, Purana, Bhagavad Purana, Purana, Bharate, Mahabharat, Bhagavad Gita. Odo in the beginning, Ante at the end, and Madhyam in the middle. What? Beginning, middle, end. What? Hari Sarvatra Jiyate. Only Krishna and his devotees are mentioned. Krishna's pastimes. So you see how important Prabhupada has given us this responsibility. Prabhupada realized immediately his responsibility. He didn't have the luxury of the Vapu, of the association of his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Prabhupada he spent very, very little time. But he was he spent a lot of time with his instructions. Very little time with physical representation. Very little time with his Guru Maharaj physically together. But constantly, forever, constantly, constant association with the words of his spiritual master. So, Srila Prabhupada, being the most benevolent acharya, one would have to say as a disciple, that has ever been in our time, in Kali Yuga. He has come, and in a very short time, how long was Prabhupada physically present on the planet? Very, very little time. I remember that day in his room when he was passing. His disciples were just bereft. We were so sad and we were grieving so much to see Prabhupada leave. Because we would reflect, Matchata Makkata Prana, Bodhayanta Parasparam, Kathayantas Jamam Nityam, Tushanti Charamanti Cha. Krishna says, the thoughts of my devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered unto me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening one another and conversing about me. So that's what we're doing this morning. We're enlightening one another and conversing about Krishna, about the spiritual master, about the emperors, about Rishabdev. This is what we're doing. As Prabhupada gave us the way. So we have to pick up. Prabhupada spent very little time with his Guru Maharaj. He also spent very little time in Vrindavan itself, because he was concerned, his heart was molten gold, full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls, following in the line of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Advaita Acharya, he was perplexed. Who can solve this Kali Yuga problem? There's only one person. And he prayed and he prayed and he prayed at the side of the Ganga with tulsi leaves, and he prayed to Lord Chaitanya, please Lord, come and give these souls away. There is so much darkness. And Lord Chaitanya came, you know. And now Prabhupada he has Lord Chaitanya's heart. Prabhupada has inherited Lord Chaitanya's heart. And look what he's given to us. So how fortunate we are all here. And we're doing the right thing. Isn't it nice that we're all able to do the right thing together? We chant Hare Krishna minimum 16 rounds of japa. We follow the 4 regulative principles, and we Krishnaize our senses. Not like in the 3rd chapter, Kama Resha Krodesha, Rajaguna Samudbhava. We Krishnaize the senses. And just keep this in mind. We're almost there.